She was just 4 weeks away from walking free. Angela Monroe, 38 years old, had done nearly 8 years behind bars for aggravated assault. But this wasn't just time served, it was time transformed. She had walked into Silver Pines Correctional Facility angry, broken and bitter. But over the years she became something else, something many said they'd never seen in these walls. A leader, a listener, a woman trying to stitch back together the pieces of a shattered life. She ran prayer circles, taught GED classes, helped addicts write letters home. She wasn't just surviving, she was changing, earning her shot at early parole, and the officers, the staff, even the board, took notice. And through all of it, Julian Monroe never left her side. Every single Saturday, no matter the weather, no matter the holiday, Julian showed up, smiling, steady, loyal, or so it seemed. He'd bring her news from outside, stories from their old neighborhood, sometimes even their dog's favorite toy, just to make her laugh. To anyone watching, they were a couple surviving the impossible, a love that endured. But not everything survives prison. And sometimes what waits for you outside is far worse than what you're leaving behind. 3 nights before the murders, Angela couldn't sleep. Her gut told her something was off. She'd been scheduled for a private early morning parole consultation with Warden Tessa Hensley, a rare opportunity. Normally those meetings happened in groups. This one was solo. She took it as a good sign, another step toward freedom. She even did her hair, put on lipstick, not for show but for hope. She was told to report at 7 a.m, but Angela arrived at 6:43. She was always early. It was part of her change, being reliable, punctual. What she didn't expect was the door already ajar. And inside, she saw it all. Warden Hensley, the woman who controlled her entire fate, half naked, laughing. Julian Monroe, her husband, shirtless, hands where they shouldn't be, his wedding band still on. Angela didn't scream. She didn't speak. She stood there for 14 seconds. Later, investigators would freeze frame that moment. Her eyes, her body language, 1,000 calculations happening in real time. But what they couldn't see was what cracked inside. Because betrayal in a prison cuts differently. You're already trapped. But when the one person you trusted brings the pain inside with them, it's a kind of psychological suffocation. Angela walked away. The rest? It took less than 7 minutes. 2 people would die. 1 woman would sit back down, covered in blood. And the story everyone thought they knew, about loyalty and love and rehabilitation, would unravel in ways no one saw coming. And this wasn't just about infidelity. This wasn't just a crime of passion. This was something deeper. Because when police opened Angela's locker after the murders, they didn't find rage. They found a notebook with timestamps, with threats, with warnings. Angela had been documenting something for months, a theory, a suspicion, a fear. And in her own words, scribbled just 9 days before the bloodshed. If I disappear, it wasn't an accident. This is the story of Angela Monroe, the betrayed, the inmate, the wife, the killer, or the woman who simply said, "Enough." Was she a victim or a mastermind? Before you judge, hear her story. And if you believe true stories like this deserve to be told, please hit the like button. It helps more than you know. Angela knew prison had its own language. Not the kind you spoke with words, but with glances, silences, routines. In Millstone Women's Facility, power didn't announce itself. It hovered, it watched, it waited. By month 3, Angela had stopped crying at night. The weight of the metal bed was now familiar. The morning counts at 4 a.m. no longer startled her. Her hands were steady, her face unreadable. But her heart, it hadn't hardened. Not yet. Because something about this place was wrong. It wasn't just the grime or the fights or the mouldy food. Those came with the territory. It was the air, the silence after lights out. It was the way certain guards held eye contact a beat too long, the way Warden Tessa Hensley walked through the unit like she owned not just the prison, but the women in it. She wasn't loud, she wasn't vulgar, she was worse, controlled. Tessa was in her mid-40s, tall with ice-toned skin and perfect posture. Her uniform always crisp, hair in a tight twist. Her eyes didn't blink unless she meant it. She didn't need to raise her voice. People moved when she entered. Inmates, staff, everyone. Rumours about her floated through the blocks like smoke. Some said she used to be a prosecutor. Others claimed she was military before corrections. But what everyone agreed on was this: Warden Hensley got what she wanted, and no one ever said no to her more than once. Angela began noticing strange things. Certain cells always got first showers, no matter the rotation. One girl got extra pillows, another got early access to the phone. Inmate Cassidy from B block. She had new sneakers but hadn't had a visitor in months. Then one morning, Angela caught something that stopped her cold. She was on laundry duty, folding sheets behind the medic wing when she heard laughter. Not inmate laughter. Deep, masculine, familiar. She peered through the cracked door. There, inside the warden's office, was Julian, her husband, not in orange, not in cuffs, but in a CO's uniform. Angela's breath caught. He wasn't supposed to be there. He hadn't written in months. She thought he'd moved on. She'd grieved him. Let him go. But there he was, smiling, leaning over Tessa's desk. His hand grazed hers like it belonged there. And Warden Hensley? She was smiling back. Angela ducked behind the door, heart pounding like war drums in her chest. She didn't know whether to cry or scream. That night, her hands trembled as she opened her Bible. She flipped past the passages she once read for peace, pulled out the slips of paper she had hidden beneath the binding. Her notes, all the strange activity she'd tracked for weeks, names, patterns, disappearances. They were no longer random. It wasn't just corruption, it was personal. The bruises on Cassidy's arms, the sudden perks for quiet girls, the transfers no one questioned. And now, Julian, in uniform, inside Millstone, sleeping with the woman who held Angela's fate in her hands. He wasn't trying to get close to her. He was helping bury her. Angela didn't sleep that night. She watched the ceiling, fists clenched, memory looping, Julian's hand on Tessa's. The way she laughed like Angela never existed. Like the vows they made were some long-forgotten joke. Had Julian come to finish what prison started? Or had he always been this man, and she just never saw it? The next day, Angela didn't smile. She didn't speak. She just moved through the halls with new eyes. And when the guards passed, she no longer looked away. She stared back. Because now, she wasn't afraid. She was planning. She was awake. If you caught your husband cheating, while you were locked away, with the one person who controlled your freedom, what would you do? Drop your answer in the comments. And if your jaw dropped like mine just did, hit that like button and subscribe. The next chapter only gets darker. Angela Monroe was always early. That morning, the air felt heavier, colder, the sky barely awake. She was scheduled for a private parole meeting, the kind that meant something. A one-on-one sit-down with Warden Tessa Hensley herself. No cellmates, no counsellors, no guards hovering. Just a quiet conversation about freedom, or the denial of it. She hadn't been sleeping well. Too many dreams about the outside, too many fears about it slipping away. So she got up early, washed her face twice, tied her hair neatly behind her head. Then she applied lipstick, crimson, just a little. For hope, she would later say. The clock read 6:43 a.m. The meeting was for 7. Angela stepped into the corridor, her boots echoing faintly against the concrete floor. The hall was dim, the air almost humming. She passed the guard's desk, empty. Then she saw the door. Warden Hensley's office, ajar, not wide, just cracked, like an invitation or a warning. Angela approached slowly, holding her breath. She wasn't sure why she didn't knock, but she didn't. Instead, she gently pushed it open, and what she saw broke something inside her that would never be rebuilt. There, behind the large wooden desk, half obscured by the blinds, Julian, her husband, shirtless, smiling, standing between Warden Hensley's thighs. Tessa Hensley was laughing, a low, husky laugh, her blouse unbuttoned, her black bra exposed, a file folder spread across the desk like some cruel prop in a theatre of betrayal. Angela didn't scream, didn't curse, didn't move for the longest 4 seconds of her life. 14 seconds to be exact, captured later on the grainy security camera in the hallway. You could freeze frame it, zoom in. Her pupils dilate, her breath stops, her shoulders don't rise and they collapse. Like a body giving up on itself, one detective described it later. Then, just like that, she turned and walked away, out of frame. But she wasn't gone. 6 minutes and 39 seconds later, she returned. Angela re-entered that office, barefoot, pale, calm. The next time that door opened, there was blood. A lot of it. Angela stepped into the hallway, hands trembling, her beige prison top soaked. Her bare feet left faint red prints on the polished floor. Her expression, blank, not angry, not sad, just unrecognizably still. In her right hand, Warden Hensley's sidearm. She walked exactly 17 feet down the corridor, set the gun down beside a water fountain, and slid down the wall. She didn't run, didn't cry. She just whispered 2 words. They deserved it. What happened inside that office would trigger a lockdown, 2 internal investigations, a high-profile criminal trial, and a media storm the prison system never saw coming. But what no one realized yet was that this wasn't just about an affair, not just betrayal, not just a woman pushed too far. This was about something far more calculated, because buried beneath the rage and the blood was a secret Angela had been tracking for months, and in her cell, taped beneath the bottom bunk, was a notebook. Every page, evidence, every entry, a warning. Angela hadn't snapped, she had prepared. What followed was chaos. Sirens, screams, a full lockdown. Warden Hensley's office was sealed off. Forensics swarmed the scene. Angela was zip-tied, escorted, strip-searched, drug-tested and thrown into solitary. But through it all, she didn't cry, didn't speak again, not for hours. The DA called it a clear-cut case of premeditated revenge, but not everyone agreed. Because what they found next turned this open and shut double homicide into something far more disturbing. It started with Angela's locker. Inside, hidden behind the lining of an old coat, officers discovered a notebook. Not a diary, a dossier. Page after page of dates, times, descriptions, guard names, cell movements, suspicious appointments between Warden Hensley and Julian, many of which weren't logged officially. Angela had been watching, tracking, documenting. She wasn't just suspicious, she was preparing for something. Then came the security logs. Angela's attorneys subpoenaed months of visitor records, and something didn't add up. Julian Monroe had been logged as an official visitor only 8 times that year. But surveillance logs, from blind spots Hensley assumed no one reviewed, showed at least 13 appearances. Someone had been manually clearing him into restricted areas of the prison. No searches, no tracking, no accountability. The clearance, signed by Warden Tessa Hensley. Staff started whispering, first quietly, then louder. 3 different COs admitted seeing Julian in areas off-limits to civilian visitors, including the staff kitchen and the armory. 2 claimed they thought he had been hired as a prison contractor. One said she saw him leave Warden Hensley's office late at night, shirt untucked, belt loose. Nobody reported it. Because nobody wanted to go against Hensley, she was the boss. She controlled transfers, visitation, parole recommendations. She could make or break careers. And if she said someone was authorized, you didn't question it. The bombshell came when a prison counselor, an older woman named Delia Winters, came forward. Delia was the kind of person no one noticed, always in cardigans, kept her tea in a thermos, quiet, polite, tired. She told investigators something chilling. Angela came to me 3 days before the murders, said she was scared for her life, not because of the other inmates but because of her husband and the warden. She said if anything happened to her, it wasn't an accident. Winters had made a formal report, filed it, stamped it, turned it in. But when the prison administration was asked for that report, it was gone, vanished. No record in the system, no signature, no timestamp, like it never existed. Angela had tried to raise alarm bells. Months earlier, she'd submitted an anonymous grievance, warning that a staff member was engaged in inappropriate, coercive and manipulative behaviour with a married inmate's spouse. She hadn't named names because she was scared. The grievance? Dismissed, unsubstantiated. Angela had told the system she was drowning, and the system had looked away. But it wasn't just infidelity. It wasn't just betrayal. This was about control. Because in the hours before her meeting with Warden Hensley, Angela's final parole review had been processed. She was expecting an approval. Instead, it was a denial, signed by Hensley herself, despite recommendations from 2 counsellors and a parole officer who had vouched for Angela's reform. Why? No one knew, until they checked the metadata on the digital form. Hensley had signed the denial after midnight, hours after Julian had last been seen on prison grounds. Angela's parole had been sabotaged, and not by random chance, by the 2 people she once trusted the most. So was it a crime of passion? Yes, but it was also a crime of prevention, a retaliation, a message. Angela Monroe had been backed into a corner, lied to, controlled, mocked. And when she walked into that office, barefoot and bloodless, she wasn't there to beg. She was there to reclaim power, with a weapon, and with no intention of being anyone's victim ever again. 2 lives ended that morning, one behind a desk and one on a couch. But what Angela Monroe did next in the courtroom would turn her into a symbol, a monster to some, a martyr to others. Because when the trial began, the world finally saw the side of this story no one was prepared for. Angela Monroe sat in courtroom 3B like a ghost, not shackled, not weeping, just still. No makeup, no emotion, just a single braid over her left shoulder and a jawline locked like it had something left to say, but wouldn't waste breath doing it. The prosecution didn't waste time. To them, this was simple. A jealous wife with unresolved rage who walked into an office with a motive and left behind 2 corpses. They showed the photos, frame by frame, blood pooled across the tile, a close-up of the weapon, a screenshot of Angela's face the moment she stepped out of that office. One word was used over and over: premeditated. But the defense painted a different picture. Angela wasn't a cold-blooded killer. She was a target, a pawn, a woman cornered by people who played God with her freedom and her sanity. They called their first witness, Delia Winters. She took the stand with trembling hands and a folded tissue tucked into her sleeve. Her testimony was calm, but the room, you could feel it crack. She said Angela came to her 3 days before the murders, scared, confused, convinced she was being set up, not just denied parole, but erased, silenced, like she didn't matter. Delia's statement stunned the jury, because the one report that could have helped Angela, it vanished. The prosecution tried to discredit it, called it hearsay, said there was no digital trace of any warning. But then, something shifted. Angela's journal was submitted into evidence. More than 80 pages, handwritten, numbered, dates, observations, conversations, specific entries describing Julian's mysterious visits, Hensley's changing tone, and a series of coded letters Angela had received from Julian in the months leading up to the murders. "Don't trust the process. Trust me. She promised things. I didn't want this, but it's complicated. If you talk, you'll lose more than freedom." One line in particular was underlined 3 times. "They think I'll sit still while they build a future on my grave." And then came the inheritance. Angela's cousin, a quiet man named Deshaun Fields, testified that their grandmother had left behind a small estate in rural Virginia. The deed and payout were tied to Angela, not Julian. But if Angela were found mentally unfit or incarcerated indefinitely, Julian would gain partial access as her next of kin. He had pressured her, even while she was inside, to sign over rights. She refused. Days later, her parole was denied. Coincidence or coordination? The courtroom was no longer about justice. It became a referendum on who Angela was and who the system had made her become. The media circled like sharks. Some called her a feminist folk hero, a woman who reclaimed power from a corrupt system. Others branded her a calculated killer, using trauma as a shield for murder. The jury was torn. On guilt? There was no debate. She had done it. 2 people were dead. But on motive? They argued for hours behind closed doors. Was it premeditated or provoked? Was it vengeance or survival? In the end, Angela Monroe was convicted of double homicide. Life without parole. No chance of clemency. No appeals granted. And when the sentence was read, she didn't flinch. What happened next shook the prison system to its core. 3 former inmates came forward, all with eerily similar stories about Warden Hensley: late-night visits, inappropriate conduct, promises of parole in exchange for silence or favors. One woman claimed Hensley forged psychiatric evaluations to extend certain sentences, keeping specific women under her control. Investigations opened, emails leaked, a deeper web was uncovered, involving contractor kickbacks, illegal overtime payments, and at least 1 inmate transfer that was done off record. Angela had been the first to bleed, but she wasn't the last to speak. Julian's reputation was destroyed. His family, once loyal, cut ties with his name. His sister called it the ultimate betrayal, disguised as love. In a closed interview months after the trial, one former parole officer said, "Angela Monroe didn't just kill her husband, she killed the illusion that the system protected women like her." In her final statement to the court, Angela didn't cry, didn't apologize. She stared down the judge with hollow eyes and said, "I walked in that room to ask for my life back, and I saw 2 people who already decided it wasn't mine to have. So I took something from them instead." Was Angela Monroe a woman broken by betrayal? Or someone who weaponized victimhood? Did she lose control, or finally take it back? In a world where power plays out behind closed doors, is justice ever really served? Tell us in the comments, was she a victim or a mastermind? And if this story shook you, hit like, subscribe, and brace yourself. Because next week, we dive into the bride who faked her own death, just to catch her cheating husband at the funeral.